The first thing I wanted to ask was, could you explain to people what QE actually is, and the new version of it, and how it will affect the people of the U.S.?
Okay. Well, QE is a relatively new term, started off since the crisis hit, and all it means is they have been doing more of what they've been doing all along. The Federal Reserve, their business is creating new money, believing they can regulate the economy and the business cycle through the manipulation of money and credit and interest rates. They do manipulate it, but always to the negative, and they've always claimed that they could solve the problems, and they would never admit they create the problems. Well, once we got into the very, very bad recession of '08, Bernanke then wanted to test his theories that he has been preaching, for many decades, and he did his thesis on it. When you get into trouble, you print money faster and faster and faster, whatever is necessary. You take interest rates down as low as you can, and that'll solve the problem. So it's massive monetary inflation is what they do. So they came up with this term QE. They did it at the beginning, then they had another round of it a couple of years later, and that was QE2. And now with this recent announcement, since it, to me, should have been very, very negative on the markets, because what they were saying is we're in such trouble now, we are going to, as bad as what we've done with QE1 and QE2, we're going to massively, more so than ever, increase money and credit, and it's going to be endless until it works. To me, it was a very, very negative signal for our dollar, for price inflation, for the economy, because it hasn't worked. But we're just starting that, and he says it'll go on until it solves the problem. But the problem it really is that it'll eventually make the economy worse, and it's not going to do any good, and they'll be forced to reassess matters.
Okay, yeah, I tend to agree with that. Now, I guess tied to that is I know you've been advocating a gold standard for a while, and this year there was some language in the GOP platform like that. Do you think the Republicans are really going to get behind a gold standard, or is it just rhetoric?
They're not going to really do it. They didn't say they'd be behind a gold standard. They were willing to say that they could, reestablish a gold commission like we had in the early 1980s to study a possibility. But I think that was just an attempt to try to mollify, some of the Ron Paul supporters who want something like that done. But they did take a position that we should have an audit of the Federal Reserve. But I think it's more politics than strong beliefs. I don't think anybody in the hierarchy of either party will support either a gold standard. Quite frankly, I think they're going to be very hesitant to have a thorough audit of the Fed as well. But that doesn't mean the numbers of people who are supporting this aren't growing. And one of the reasons Republicans had to answer to this is I believe our campaign got the grassroots stirred up, and a lot of people understand it now. So the political pressure has had them to do that. And some people might say, well, that's not worth anything because they haven't really changed their beliefs. But their beliefs are to do whatever they have to do to satisfy the people so they don't lose office. So in a way, it's a very strong indication that we are winning this fight, but we're not on the verge of the true audit of the Fed. We're not on the verge of a gold standard. But as conditions get much worse, I think we'll keep going closer to that point. And this is the reason that I think it's very good that we are at least talking about this, because then we'll have an option when the time comes.
Sure. Okay, so with these things tying together, the quantitative easing will definitely devalue the dollar, which will be a result which will result in inflation. But the gold standard, let's just take, for instance, if we were to return to a gold standard, how does that affect ordinary people as far as their money?
Well, it depends on whether you're talking about, if tomorrow we announce there's a gold standard, that's one thing. If you went back to it sensibly and reduce the need to print money, that is, stop all the deficits, that would be a different story. If you're on a gold standard, it helps the people, because the paper money system helps the banks and corporations and the politicians who want to spend money and not be responsible. Then they can pass the money out in welfare benefits or to continue fighting wars that they shouldn't be fighting. So the people under sound money, the average person benefits a lot because his savings aren't confiscated. Even today, they claim there's no inflation, but there's enough inflation to make it very difficult to live on a fixed income. So the people always suffer. But the question on the transition is different, and even I don't advocate, just tomorrow going to the gold standard and dropping the Federal Reserve.
Sure.
Chaos is, we have enough chaos right now. If we continue to do what we're doing, it will, the monetary system will default and we'll have to do something. So, but I'm advising a transition and work our way back. The best example of knowing how to do this would be to look at the Resumption Act of 1875 when they went back on the gold standard after the Civil War period. And it was pretty much of a non-event. But at that time, they just quit printing money. They quit spending money. They didn't run up debts. Governments could be trusted to do what they say. We weren't fighting wars overseas. So conditions are so different. So even if our government told us today, well, we're going to quit and we're going to honor the dollar at $2,000 an ounce and we're going to go back to the gold standard, not anybody knowledgeable probably wouldn't believe them because we haven't ended the wars and we haven't dealt with the, entitlement system. So the big issue is what kind of government we have or whether we'll quit spending. And so for that reason, that's why I advocate just legalizing legalizing the right of the people to use gold and silver as legal tender instead of calling it a criminal act and wanting to put people in prison for using gold. That way people can get out of the paper money if they want to and use sound money if they choose.
Okay.